only one old enough to remember that. Anyway, they just came to life. She was so good at it. And I don't know if that was the drawing card or the cookies we got afterwards. But anyway, we would stop there for Bible school. And of course, we attended Sunday school there at my grandmother's instigation. So that was my first church home, and was there for many years. I attended there till I was married there. My children were baptized there. I served on all the boards, sang in the choir, the whole bit, as you can understand. And in the mid-'70s, I decided that I was very unhappy and got a divorce. Well, no one in that church reached out to me in any way at all. And I was so disappointed. In a way, I was ostracized from the group. And I just, after that, I was disillusioned with any kind of church. Didn't want to go to church at all. So when I met my second husband, Paul, and at his job, he worked with a woman that was talking about her Unitarian Universalist church. And this was in our little hometown. And it sounded so interesting to him that he wanted to go try it out. And I said, oh, okay, we'll try it, see what it's like. Well, the first church service we went to was a flower ceremony. We have them here. You've all know what that is. It was absolutely fabulous. It had wonderful music. The children all came running, playing down the aisle with huge crepe paper flowers that they had made in their RE program. And they were singing and dancing down the aisle. It was just a joyous service. And I was sold from that moment on. One of the forums we went to, a gentleman was showing his snake collection. That's how diverse they were. I mean, it was just an interesting place to be. I had a woman minister, as we do, which is interesting. Well, we moved away shortly after we started going to that church, so we never got real involved in it. But everywhere we moved after that, we tried a Unitarian Universalist church. None of them hit. None of them fit us at all. Of course, they were all big churches, like Dallas and Albuquerque, New Mexico, and also San Antonio. And none of those churches, we were like a little ant in the pile, so it didn't work. When we moved here in 2001 and built a home at the lake, Paul saw an ad for this church, and it was forums, is all they were doing on Wednesday night. So we started attending forums and found it interesting. And about this time that we joined, they started Sunday services at the senior center. Well, at first I was very skeptical because I was so disillusioned. And I thought these people were just too good to be true. They can't be what they say. But these people are real, and they do what they say. They act on their beliefs, and I was sold. Took me a while, but I was sold. On our journey, someone from the church here suggested that Paul and I listen to the Joseph Campbell tapes on a road trip we were going to take back home to Iowa. And we listened to those tapes all the way home. And it changed our belief system. And it set me on a journey to finding my own philosophy. So that's my story. I've been here ever since, and I wouldn't be anywhere else in the world. I love this place and these people. Thank you.
So can you hear me? Before I present my journey, I want to read to you Revade's journey that I found in her contribution to this book, The Rough Side of a Mountain, which is a compilation of stories by Black female ministers that Revade contributed to. And I was actually looking for maybe a reading for today's service, and I found just a short synopsis of her story. So She says, the path to ministry. Before receiving a call to ministry, I had never heard of Unitarian Universalism. I'd been a faithful Catholic before I left the church. The call came in a spiritual, metaphysical form that surprised me. However, after answering yes, I was at a loss as to where I would find the next step in my spiritual journey. But answers to questions sometimes come from the most unlikely sources. I have 4 sons, and one is well-versed in world religions. He suggested that I should consider going to the Unitarian Universalists because, in his opinion, they were a lot like me. One Sunday morning, instead of going to the service at the Unity Church that I was currently attending, I got off the bus on the corner of Gary and Franklin Streets and walked through the doors of the First Unitarian Society of San Francisco. It was one of those Sundays when tables were set up by the various committees in the congregation, providing pamphlets with information on the functions of each one. I was in such awe of the plethora of options to serve that I was sold before I ever attended a worship service. I not only found a new way to worship, I also found a congregation that believed in good and the importance of giving back to community. And that has always been important to me. The congregation had co-ministers, one male and one female. I met with both, informing them of my intention to attend seminary. I soon signed the membership book, and the congregation became my sponsoring church for my enrollment as a student in Star King School for the Ministry. The female minister became my mentor. So that is Reveday's story. And so mine is similar in that I also was raised Catholic and had become pretty disillusioned with the Catholic Church. I tried to hang in off and on, but I eventually just became a nothing, or a fallen away Catholic, as it's been called. So I didn't do nearly as much soul searching as I'm sure Reveday did when she made her decisions, but I was in Milwaukee, and I was spending my Sunday mornings with a Jewish friend of mine at the downtown cathedral in Milwaukee, not attending Mass, but we were serving at a meal program that they ran on Sundays to fill in the gap because the other meal programs only served during the week. And so that's what I was doing until I was trying to make the move down here. And I kept seeing in my local newspaper that a Unitarian Universalist church was having forums on green building techniques. And that's what I was trying to do as I was building my house down here. So I was generally out of town down here when they were presenting these forums. I only made it to like one. But I thought, what are the chances that little New Braunfels, Texas is going to have a Unitarian Universalist church? But I did what everybody does now. I got online and I found the website and I started reading about it. I thought, hey, this sounds like a place that would have people that think like me. And so I made a note of the address, and I know it's coming down in August, so I brought water for the water ceremony that I read about. And sometime in early September, I walked in and Diane Pepin greeted me, and here I am. 15 years later, and I never looked back, I just felt at home. Everyone was so welcoming, and I made dear friends, and I'm just very thankful to be here. So that is my path. It was a quick and easy one. So I also want to announce that our other board member, our treasurer, Jeff Jenkins, is in Colorado, and he texted me and said that he forgot to record his journey story. So I assured him that that was perfectly okay, that sometime in the future he can present an entire 20-minute program on it, telling us in depth about his journey.
My spiritual journey. Good morning. I grew up a Catholic, one of 8 children, attended Catholic schools grades 1 through 12. I even shaved my first Barbie and dressed her in a nun's habit. It's kind of funny how Barbies kept showing up in my life. During the 1998 flood, I found a poor soaked Barbie in a tree behind our house, our flooded house. Charles C. Hayes took that Barbie. She washed and dressed and decorated her with feathers and returned her to me at our open house when we moved back in. Here she is, feathers and all. So how did I escape the clutches of Catholicism? During the Vietnam era, I was stationed with my first husband in Germany for 3 years. He was in the Air Force, serving in the security service designed to listen to Russian troops across the border. We met many young people from all over the world during that time, and it was such a life-changing experience. It just changed me forever. For this homegrown Texas girl, I came home a liberal-thinking war dissenter, a divorced, poor college student. I met John at the University of Houston, the love of my life, and we decided to move to New Braunfels to raise our family. I finished my education at Texas State and taught school for 30 years. During those years, I met Thea Cheshire, our founder at Canyon High School. She was a special ed teacher, and I taught remedial reading, so we had a lot of students in common. She had a small group of spiritual seekers meeting at her house every Wednesday. I was looking for a group I felt I could trust. They were so warm and welcoming. I found my spiritual family. To make sure I was on the right path, Thea and I visited several UU churches in San Antonio and Austin. Our group was committed and growing. We moved to the New Braunfels Senior Center for Sunday services. It was during this time that I signed the book to become a Unitarian Universalist. Our group was growing so much that we finally ended up at Faith Church that allowed us to meet on Wednesday evenings. It was then that we started searching for property, and we found a lot on Alvis Lane. We had our first Earth Day ceremony there and had a picnic on the lot. Unfortunately, John and I were transferred to Corpus for 4 years. I missed the whole construction era and returned many times, though, for weddings and services to our wonderful building. We decided to move to Fredericksburg since our kids were grown and New Braunfels was growing wildly. We wanted a peaceful place to retire, and we found it near Enchanted Rock. We started growing grapes, and we had a little vineyard called Enchanted Rock Vineyard. But I really missed my church life and my friends in New Braunfels. My life changed forever when COVID hit. John died suddenly of a heart attack, and my farming and vineyard days were over. I decided to move back to New Braunfels in 2020, and in 2021, I found a house and moved. Then my spiritual life was renewed, and I found my old UU friends still here and moving forward with a gusto. I'm still trying to keep up. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
This is a community that encourages the full expression of our spiritual essence in a way that honors and celebrates our values, ethics, beliefs, and inner knowings. We believe there is no one right path, There is only the path that is right for each individual. We believe there is no one way to express our connections to the universe. There is only the expression that is right for each of us. Isn't it amazing that there are so many different paths and so many different ways to believe? The next one.
Brought some show and tell, so you can kind of get a vision of my past life. I guess, well, one thing I would like to do, this is a picture of my grandmother, who was probably the most influential person as far as my spiritual path goes. But if y'all want to just pass around, get an idea of what she looked like when that's me about 70 years ago.
What was her name?
Well, I called her Mimo. Mimo. And then her name was Vera Waller Joyner.
Where was the picture taken?
It was taken in a very small town in Heflin, in Louisiana, which is called Heflin, Louisiana. Heflin, it's northern Louisiana, small sawmill town. My granddad was a foreman at the sawmill, and my grandparents lived in a rented sawmill house for $15 a month. So they had a good life, they were happy, and he worked, I believe, 6 days a week. And the sawmill whistle would go off at 5 in the morning and 5 in the evening. So anyway, we would go on vacation, and that would be where we would go, to my grandmother's house. Just start pulling some things out of here. This was our family Bible. A lot of you probably have seen one. It was given to my mom and dad in Christmas of 1942, and then Mother and Daddy gave it to me in 1968. It's just, it's probably, 40? It's old, probably close to 80 years old. This was the Bible I received as a child. Some of you may have it. It was one that had a lot of pictures in it, nice pictures, Noah and the Ark, David and Goliath, and several more. I went through, I'd never have read the Bible in totality, but I did go through and read certain verses that I liked, and I would make note of them as a child when I found one I really liked. And I also have, I guess, the things that can tell you about my grandmother more than anything are the different books and things she gave me. And she would write something in each one of them. This is called Wings of Silver. It talks about love, joy, peace, suffering, gentleness, conscience. And it was given to me by Mimo on Christmas of 1972. She said, "Margot, I hope you enjoy this book as much as I did. It has been a great comfort to me. I love you, Mimo." And this one is just a little booklet, and it like when trouble comes and things go wrong, it tells you, has a little poem or something to go with it. And she wrote, "Margot, remember we love you. When you get tired, weary, and blue, remember that all of us are thinking of you." So you can tell I felt loved. This is well, let me show you this. This is called Good Morning, God. And on the back, my grandmother wrote, "I love you dearly, Mimo." And she was obviously a Christian. She gave monthly to Billy Graham. She thought he hung the moon. So Mother and Daddy and I went to the Astrodome and went and saw Billy Graham. I went down and accepted Christ at that time, and the religion was offered to me. It was never pushed on me. And my parents were doing it, I think, to be responsible parents. But my grandmother really believed this, and she's the one that had the most influence. A couple more here. This is a spiritual songbook, and she inscribed in it and said, "Margot, I bought this book from Reverend Paul Castle. These are good old songs that I was raised on, and I hope you enjoy singing them." And she was born in the 1890s, so they're still the same old songs that we sing. And then this was the one that we used in her church. I don't know how I acquired it. They must have bought some new ones. But it starts out in the front. It has the Apostles' Creed. And it has several of the songs. And I even made a list when I was young of the songs that I liked. It's front and back. So, you know, it has songs like "Just As I Am," "The Old Rugged Cross," "What a Friend We Have in Jesus," all the popular songs at that time. And I still love the songs. I still sing them, and I question myself as to why, because of what it says, but it's comforting to me. You know, I grew up with them, and it feels good. So, and then one last thing is she gave me this book, "The Greatest Gift is Love," and it was given to her from Emma Davis to Vera Joyner, and that was in Heflin, Louisiana, and that was her neighbor. And then my grandmother gave it to me eventually, and it says, "Margot, read every word and keep it in your heart. The time might come when God's word will be denied us, and what you have in your heart, no one can take away from you, Mimo." So I thank her for everything that she did for me. I lit a candle also for my mother. My mother had some problems, but she was an extremely kind and unbiased woman, so they contributed to my spiritual path. And one other thing, and I'll be done here.
Well, it was about 2 years ago, this time of year, when my husband George and I nervously walked through that front door to investigate Unitarian Universalists. We were really delighted to be greeted by the most warm and friendly group of people we had ever been around. They greeted us and they gave us name tags and they escorted us into this room for the service. Some of them are here today. But it was Father's Day, and the poetry group was reading poems about their fathers, their own compositions to honor their own fathers. And that was very moving. And then after the service, during coffee and conversation, we were greeted by more members who made us feel very much at home. To backtrack, I grew up in a Protestant denomination and went to Sunday school, participated in youth group, vacation Bible school, church camp, Bible study, everything. Being somewhat sheltered, I believed as I was taught in a literal translation of the Bible. The next step in my spiritual journey occurred during my college experience. Since I attended a denominational university, I took classes in the Old and New Testaments. The religion professor explained that many stories in the Bible did not take place exactly as written, if they took place at all. For example, the Red Sea didn't miraculously part for Moses. The tide went out. And there had been lots of stories of the earth being flooded. It wasn't just the story of Noah. It's in many cultures. This teaching was heresy to me at the time. I couldn't imagine. A seed of doubt was planted and my search for the truth began. After college, I spent the next decades in a couple of denominations being active and raising our children, I believed, to be good people with values, morals, and ethics. After our children left home, I joined a denomination that was more socially liberal. I struggled with some of the liturgy and repetition, but enjoyed the fellowship, the music, and the opportunity to serve. Then the event of the decade occurred, and COVID closed our church, like most churches, and all of our activities stopped. Early on, we decided to join our daughter and son-in-law and move to New Braunfels. Rather quickly, we relocated and began our lockdown here. For 2 years, we had lots of time to think, research online, discuss what we really believed. And when it was safe to venture out again, we had decided Unitarian Universalists were compatible with our belief system. And surprisingly, there was a Unitarian Universalist congregation in New Braunfels. So soon after that, I guess about 4 months, we signed the book to become members. And after being here a while, I observed how active the members were in so many groups and activities, many of them serving and helping other people. And I knew this is where I want to be, and this is where I belong. In a congregation of love, accepting of all groups, and open to searching for the truth. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Margot, you do know that dog is God spelled backwards, right? I feel that way too with mine. And I left my glasses back there, but that's okay. I think I know what most of this says. I was baptized in a very small township because that's what the families did. My mom and dad weren't religious, didn't believe a thing, but hey, the grandparents, they ruled. So I was baptized. I vaguely remember going to that little church a couple of times for Sunday school, but very, very vaguely. And then I was drafted via my dad into the Air Force as a dependent. And of course, when you're at a military station, they have a Protestant service, a Jewish service, and a Catholic service. So you just go to one of the three. And I vaguely remember too, my mom saying, okay, we'll go to all three. That we'll be seen there, think that we're part of the community. And that was it. I thought, well, that's not very gracious. But my folks let me decide for myself. They didn't push me in any direction. But my sister, my older sister, 5 years older, she was very religious. And she kept telling me I was going to go to hell if I didn't go to Sunday school, all those different things. And then she would tell me the stories, like you said, about the Red Sea and all that. No, I don't think so. You know, you can believe that. That didn't happen. It's kind of like a Grimm's fairy tale. You know, it's interesting, but it didn't happen. And then as I grew older, I started working. My first job was for an insurance agency downtown San Antonio. And we insured the Archdiocese and all their Cadillacs. And didn't seem quite right because I had to ride the bus, you know. And on that bus in San Antonio anyway, every time the bus passed a church, all the Catholics would cross themselves. And I thought, well, that doesn't seem too strange, right? But those poor folks were riding the buses and their priests were driving Cadillacs. And so organized religion was out of the question. Then in 2017, I went to a house party for Beto O'Rourke to raise money, etc. And there I met Peggy Ornelas and her husband, Shilly, which most of you all know, I'm sure. They were late to the party because they were stuffing backpacks. And they had their love shirts on from UUNB. So, of course, I, being nosy, I had to ask Peggy what it was all about. And she told me what they were doing. And she told me about UUNB, as well as a few other things about New Braunfels, because I was getting ready to move here. And I thought, you know, that sounds so interesting. And so she invited me to come, and a few weeks later I did. And I had the same welcome that everyone else has spoken about when you walk in that front door. You know you're part of something very, very nice. So, let's see. Oh yes, very important thing. When I was signing in, or maybe Peggy gave it to me at the party, I'm not sure, but this little card, and it's out front if any of you want one. There's plenty out there. It's the Covenant, and it contains the 7 principles. Oh, now this I can't read without my glasses. And our beliefs, basically our beliefs. And I felt so connected that this was something I could really, really be part of. And I learned so much about it, and now it's my second home. Thank you.
Ted, you have a presentation you want to make? Okay. Whichever.
6 years ago, several of us, mostly from this congregation, got together and created something we called New Braunfels Chamber Music. Our inspiration was a fellow named Bill McNally, whom Catherine and I met in a restaurant. Bill is a fine musician on his own, and he knows a lot of fine musicians and is married to one, Dario Robotkina. Bill got excited about the New Braunfels chamber music idea and created a series of 6 years of really splendid concerts of music, both classical and contemporary, drawing on his own and Dario's talents, but also other musicians of their acquaintance, and I think contacts from all over. It was a very wonderful creation just to have a series of concerts every year, and Bill has been the spark plug for that. Well, Bill, would you and Nick join me